Hi everyone, this is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching with today's video. And what I'm going to do today is explain this quilt in pieces, part by part. So get ready. All right, here is the picture of the quilt that I was working on. And it was really neat because what started it was I was working on one of those memory quilts, and it was for a theater quilt. And I wanted a star. I wanted to put some stars into it. Well, not as big as that, but I went in and I got the little star out of the center, and it was so nice. I said, oh, I'm going to see how the rest of this works, because anytime I've made like the Texas star, those kind of hexagons, and I had to sew all the pieces together. But these had very nice small pieces, and it was going to be interesting. But the block ends up to be a 16-inch hexagon. And to make a 75 by 78, it takes 20 blocks and then 5 half blocks. And I'll show you how that fits. Now if you'll look, they've got, because it's hexagons, they're going to alternate, and then you'll have a half, and you'll see how easy it is. There's a half. There's nothing hard about that. And then you go all the way down the next row with 4 and then put it in here. And then there are nice spaces in between that are going to need setting triangles. And they have a nice way to do that. And the only thing that, if you've been sewing for a while, everything's going to fall in place. The first thing, the one skill that you do need to know is how to figure out a 60-degree triangle. And they did a nice job of that, and I'll show you that. So let's get ready. And again, what's nice with this is you can do your colors, and you could make the whole thing scrappy, or you could make them all the same colors. And if you look at it, is dark on the outside. Then you can use a medium or a light, and then you have a dark again. Both of your darks can be the same color. And you just, once you make that sample, like I'm always talking about, then you really have an idea of what you're going to do with your colors. And when you look at the back, I'm one of those people, there's parts of it that are going to be ironed over, but then there's parts that you can open up. And I like that because if you decide to hand stitch it, you won't hit into those bulky places. If you sew on your sewing machine, you won't run into that bulk also. But on your sewing machine, you will not want to do way in the ditch if you get ready to top stitch this, because there's nothing folded over there. It's separated, if that makes sense. And so what I did was I just started, and I said, well, I'm going to start with my dark color first. And so the one that we're going to do today, the sample one we're going to look at, this is my dark, and I used it actually for the middle and the outside edge. And then I went with a medium, and then I went with something that was a lighter, and then that popped it back to my dark. And once you start experimenting with it, you can find different ways that you'd like to do it. But that worked out on this one that I'm working on. The first thing that I want to start with, and this was funny, is they started with the setting blocks, not the actual triangle parts, but the triangle setting blocks. Okay, I'm trying to make this clear as mud. Oh no, what a saying. I took my cutting ruler, and it had 60 degrees on one end. And to make it really easy to see, I went ahead and put my painter's tape from the corner down along that 60 degree line. And the funny thing here is, turn the ruler upside down to get ready to start. That's the funniest part. It seems so backwards. But my strip is 8 1/4 inches wide, and then you make it the width of the fabric. And what we're going to need is 45 of the whole triangles when we get to it. And 5 of those are going to just be cut in half for, I think, the corners or something like that. So now I'm going to take and slide it. My 60-degree angles up here at the top. I'm going to lay this down, and I'm going to line up my blue tape with the edge of my fabric. And this is just making the first cut. And you're not going to use a Sharpie like I did. I wanted it to show up. But if you notice, to make sure I got it right, when I got that lined up, I didn't have enough ruler left to go down. So I just grabbed my ruler or another piece, and I laid it on top of it and carried it down to the point where it needed to be. Okay, and I'm still working with my ruler turned upside down, and I came up and I put my 60 degrees right there, and then I lined it up and drew my line going down there. And that seems kind of funny, but that works. But then what I decided was, I'm not going to keep flipping that back and forth, back and forth. So I actually went ahead and made a template for the large triangle. Once I had one, I just got a piece of cardboard and cut it, a piece of calendar backing. And the one thing that I want to share with you to be aware of as you're getting ready to do that is, she talked about the straight grain, and there's 2 bias sides, and then there's the straight, then there's the straight grain, which runs this way on this fabric. You know, if I do it like this, you're not going to get much stretch. The whichever way that you don't get much stretch. And she marked it. But she didn't put a mark like this, but I wanted you to see. And she actually took she took a little clips, much smaller than this, and she would lay it where her straight grain is, and that would always be the outside of her hexagon, so that it didn't stretch. So I thought that was a neat idea for doing that, and I would do that to keep up with it. And like I said, it was going to take 45 of your triangles. That's why I went with a template. And here's my setup for my strips. Every strip is 2 inches by 21, which would be your width of your fabric, well, half of the way across your fabric, but it's 2 inches by 21. And then I laid them out. That's why I've got this board, because there's an order that they go to, of course, so they'll fall where you want them to go. So I just named the things A, B, C, D. Like here's the top was a dark. I chose a medium, and then a light, and then a dark. And that's what I always wanted to do. So your second set, you drop off the A row, and you do B, C, D. All right, then you drop off the B row of fabric, and you've got C and D. And then as we go down, you have one strip that's dark. And then later, you're going to make a strip, and you're going to make small triangles, 60-degree triangles. Those are going to go on your hexagon shape that we're making. And there are 30 for your one of your blocks that you make. And the fabric you use is 2 1/4 inch by 42, and then cut all of your triangles. But let's go back to this. So I've already taken the first 4 and I've sewn them together. And I just talk about some tips with that, because you don't want this to get really too distorted. And one of the things that I like to do is when you've got your strips, there's 2 ways you can do it. I usually have a pretty straight edge, which I did on this end. So I always, and this was a short strip. Now, if this was a long strip, I'd do it differently, but because it was short, I just started it at where I had my straightest edge every time. And as soon as I did that one, I went and ironed it, pressed it, and don't iron, but press, and then I opened the seam, and then I went and added the next one. And that made it a lot easier than trying to press over multiple ones and sewed it all the way down. If you were doing a longer strip, you would start the first strip and second strip and sew from one end, and then you would turn it, and you could start from the other end and add your third strip and then back and forth. But this was short and sweet, and you can see that they looked pretty uniform on the strips right there. And so I've got all of those fixed down to the D. And then we come back to the cutting again. Okay, now we're going to do the strips. And the first thing you're going to do, because they're going to need to be a certain way, they're going to use that 60 degrees again. So I've got it out, but this time I've got it face up because I've got it turned and I'm looking at it and not doing it upside down like the other one. And so I'm going to draw it. You don't need to draw it once you get it set, but you're going to take and do that one. And I'm short a little bit down there, and I'm not going to guess. And you could probably take your cutter and cut it neat, but I wanted to make it just right because I know they're going to have to go together. All right, so that takes off, and that's just going to be scrap. There is some scrap, but not much. Now, here's the next part. It says move over 2 inches from that one. All right, so from that one, then you're going to have to pick a spot, and that's where I went off right there. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do a 2, and then we'll do a 4, and we'll do a 6. And what we want to do is a line. Let me get this turned around. That's going to go from there to there. And you can watch your line because there was the original triangle I did. And then right here is the mark. Okay, and so if I line it up here, well, I really didn't need to put those marks on there. It sort of messed it up. But what we do is, here's my 2-inch line, and I'm going to come over, and I've got this sitting on that line. That makes it really easy, and it's going to be right. And then you come down, you move it over to 2-inch, and you cut it off, and you make your next one. And that's what you're going to do with all of your strips that you've got on your planning board. Even down to the D one, you're going to make it exactly the same. All right, and see where that goes. Here is my little planning board, and I've got another one somewhere. Oh, there it is. And this is the other half. You know, I already had shown you one half of it. So here are the parts that make the other half. Once I get those cut apart, then I start laying them out with, this was from that first big set. This was from the next set. You see how they're going to fall right into place? And here was the next set. The next one. All right. And then all those little triangles that you did, the smaller ones. And this is muslin. Muslin was used for the back and for the front for the setting blocks. And that's nice because it's easy to work with. So these are going to have to be sewn on before we can sew it together. So I go ahead and go sew that one on, that one on, that one on, and on all of them. And then you're ready to sew your parts together. And that's going to make it look so good. I really liked the way this went, and once you get everything cut and sewn together, it's just a matter of getting everything and picking your colors. But what was so fun to me was that it just turned out so nice, because watch, here is one of my triangles that I've sewn together. Here are my little muslin pieces set in there, those little triangles. And then I sewed it to the next one. And see how that fits if you're really careful. It's like working with those other hexagons. Whatever you start marking with, if it's a Sharpie or if it's a marking pen or something else, then always use the same thing. And then when I put on my third one, that makes half of my big 16-inch block. And you can see that there's not going to be any difficulty when you need a half a block. When you remember, it said for the size we were going to do that it would take 5 half blocks. Well, that would mean you need two whole blocks, but not sewn together in the middle. And then you'd have to make another one, or make another half of one. Excuse me. And that is how that turns out. And then your setting blocks go in between your hexagon blocks. And what I was going to say a minute ago was, I've had this done for 2 weeks, but I worked on some of those t-shirt quilts. And then I wanted to come back to it. And I said, oh gosh, I don't know if this will work as a video. I don't know. We'll just see. So this seems like it's working. And I want to come back to a page in the magazine that shows you again where your blocks are, and then where those large 8 1/4 inch triangles are. And then you know where all your little ones fit in there. But you see how that, using the muslin for those 2 parts, goes in there. And then I'm seeing the half setting blocks here and here and here and here. And actually all you have to do, you don't make something special, you just cut your bigger ones in half, and they're ready to set in there. And they go on the ends. Looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, if you line yours up. And this is another great one that would make a great scrappy quilt. So if you have a lot of extra parts and want to highlight some of them, that'd really be fun. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. I hope you get something out of that. I'm going to go back to this one and finish what I was working on. And any notes will be in the description. Please hit subscribe and like, and then check for your notification bell so that you get notifications when I put out my next video, which is usually almost 99% of the time Sunday morning. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. You can find me on YouTube at Stephanie Kitchens 4340, and you can find some of the things that I work on at Hightower Stitching Etsy.com. And thank you for watching.